go to Steve in Tampa. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hey, Dr. John.
How are you, brother?
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thanks for
you.
calling in. What's up, dude?
Well, so the issue is my ex-wife and I, we have 2 kids, 50-50.
Okay.
And she's dating a man with a long and a recent criminal history of domestic violence with multiple women, not to mention robbery. So the question is, how do I handle this?
Oh, my gosh, man. What have you tried?
I've tried everything. I've tried her family. I've tried lawyers. I've talked to my therapist about it. I mean, I even offered to set her up with an online dating profile just to show her that she can do so much better.
Yeah.
But nothing.
Huh. How old are your kids?
6 and 9.
Jeez Louise, man. Is she at a place where she's bringing this idiot around them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're on the verge. They're probably going to get married soon.
Okay. Give me a couple of some of the advice you received. What did your counselor say?
She had a good suggestion to create like a safe, like a password for the kids, like an emergency. I think it's like a safe word. Like if they ever just need me to come pick them up, no questions asked.
That is 100%. That'd be my number one thing. That's excellent. Or that'd be my number 2 thing. What else did she recommend?
I think that was the big one. I mean, there's, at this point, there's nothing that her mind's not going to get changed, and that's not my role.
What'd the attorney say?
But my concern, I talked to 4 attorneys, and they all said there's nothing that I can do.
You got to wait till something happens.
Yeah, it's all reactive.
Yep.
That even in the extreme case of like if he was a convicted child molester, that would be even a stretch. Like none of them gave me a legal path forward.
Wow. Unbelievable. I'm thinking, I'm putting myself in your situation. Our kids are relatively the same age. And there's nothing more important to me than the safety and security of my kids, both psychologically, physically, all that, right? And so I'm just sitting here, not as a podcast guy or a radio guy, but just as a dad to dad, man. And that feeling of powerlessness, I'm aching with you, is what I'm telling you. I'm heartbroken with you, brother. How are you doing? How are you feeling before I start running my mouth here?
Oh, it's like you said, just powerlessness.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's things I can't control. I know that I can't, prevent. I can't keep them safe from every danger out there. But this just seems imminent, and I'm just supposed to just
take it,
accept it, and that's a tough pill to swallow.
Is your wife interested in? Does she like the joint custody arrangement? Is this a power move for her?
Ex-wife.
Ex-wife. Well played. That's
a whole different rabbit hole. There's probably going to be some revisiting of that down the road.
Like if you went to her today and said, "I'm willing to take 100%, take these burdens from you, and you can go live your life," would she say great, or would it be more of a "how dare you"?
It would be "how dare you."
Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, man. All right. So here's where I'm starting if I'm you. Number 1, I want to deal with you internally, and also then transition to the limited resources that you have. Okay. Number 1, dealing with you is being constantly aware. And I'm glad you're seeing somebody. You got to get some buddies in your life, but being constantly aware of the feeling of powerlessness, because that comes out in us differently. There's genetics, there's the models we grew up with. There's all kinds of ways that comes out. But for some of us, powerlessness comes out in depression. Some of us comes out in anxiety. Some of it comes out in rage and anger, and we snap or we just fume. Some of it, we end up becoming addicted to scrolling. So think about what's happened, nationally, internationally with the COVID stuff, right? That feeling of powerlessness comes out of us in all these rando ways, and none of them are helpful, right? And so it's constantly knowing, okay, now I found myself in a situation where my body is sensing it's not in control. Here's what I'm going to do about it. Okay, so that's an important thing, is keeping yourself well in this process and not letting yourself get down a hole. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So here's number 2. I think your counselor is way onto something, and I would recommend going one step further. So you listen to this show ever, you know I am radically against phones for kids. I think those things they are destructive. There's not a redeeming quality about a kid with a cell phone. None. And in your case, I think it might be worth visiting, getting them some sort of connected device. Whether that's the GABA phones, is that the ones that have some sort of protective? They don't just open up the internet to a 7-year-old, right? But there's got to be some connection between you and your kids that then allows them to have some sort of safe text, safe words, safe calls, safe way to communicate with you. Maybe even a safe, 7's really young to start recording people without them knowing. And I don't know your state's laws, but some way they can connect with you. Do they have phones or devices now?
Yeah, they have devices.
Okay.
They
All
have
right.
tablets.
All right. So shame on you and good for you. All right. So some way they can communicate with you. That leads me to number 2. And I would explore this with your counselor. But there has to be a reality check. So I'm 100% against speaking negatively about like exes, even when they're bonkers, even when they're destructive. But that doesn't mean that we don't tell the truth factually. Okay? So I would have conversations with my kids about, and this is a good practice regardless, right? There are scary people in the world, and some of them are scary because they're loud. Some of them are scary because they hit other people. Some of them are scary, right? You see where I'm going? And this is going to be age appropriate, share, don't scare. But we're going to have a conversation with our kids that there is scary people out in the world. And I'm going to begin having conversations about, what do you do? How do we respond to this? And I want your kids to know they respond by calling you. They respond, if you're not available, by calling 911. And be very explicit about, sometimes we get so scared that we don't want to move. And that's really important that you reach out to daddy then. Sometimes we get so scared and somebody says, if you tell anybody, you're in big, big trouble, or I'm going to hurt somebody, then you really have to tell dad. You really have to tell 911, right? And having this conversation it's insane. The fact that you're even having to have this conversation, right? And that's where you find yourself. And so what we're going to do is we're going to begin to teach our kids and have conversations with our kids about this. In a less pathological example, my kids know we have a 911 rule. If we're at a store or if we're at a restaurant and I look at my son and say, this is a 911 situation, we need to go. He knows, ask no questions, don't look around. We get up and we walk out of the restaurant. And that's happened once. And again, some of this is because I grew up with a homicide detective and a SWAT guy as a father, and I run around with police officers in the middle of the night dealing with tragedy. So some of this is me being paranoid, right? But also, I want to have a situation with him that knows we got to go now, and not his normal, why? I'm still eating my burger, right? And so this is just an extension of that conversation. And invite, every time your kids come home, tell me about what y'all did. How was it? What were the good stuff? What were the B&Ws? What was the best times? What were the worst times? Tell me about a time you were scared. Tell me about a time you felt brave. And I want you to make that a part of the regular rhythm of your conversation with your kids. And again, this is insane that you're having to do this, right? But we're going to have this regular rhythm of this conversation so that, not if, but when something happens, it's a part of your regular rhythm. It's not going to be this weird new, you hear me talking with your kids about sex. If you wait to have a big dun, 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 hey kids, sex talk, it's going to be a disaster. If you make talking about sex a regular rhythm in your house, then when your kid asks a question, it's not weird. It's just part of the narrative. It's just part of the interaction in your home. Same thing we're doing here. But I want to have some sort of norm for them calling you. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you allowed, and I don't know the laws in Maryland, are you allowed to text your kids and check in with them when they're with mom, or do you have to cut off communication?
Oh, I'm allowed to communicate with them anytime I want.
Okay. So I've had some interactions with folks when they were going into meetings and they were worried about safety, and I've sat outside their meeting. There was no threats, or I've called police officers to come sit outside of a meeting when I was going to have a conversation with somebody that might be volatile. And we had things like, I'll just text you punctuation. I'll text you a question mark or a period or a hyphen. And it will look benign to anybody else. But it might just be you say, hey, I'm just going to start texting you a couple of times. You have to respond regardless. And I'm going to text you a thumbs up, and or that may be a little bit on the nose, but I'm going to text you an ABC. And if everything's going great, you text me a DEF or whatever the thing is. But y'all come up with some sort of check-in system that would be benign. And again, we're not talking about secrets, or we're not telling your kids, all right, we got to do this and not tell anybody. But just texting them, hey, I love you. And if things are going great, say, I love you back. And if they're not going great, say, I love the Astros, or whatever the thing happens to be, right? How does that sound?
That sounds like a really good idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, know that my heart's with you, man. And the moment something happens, please don't hesitate. I know you won't. You've checked with 4 lawyers. You're on top of it, Dad. Don't hesitate. Sometimes there's some hesitation, like, well, that one wasn't that bad. That one wasn't this. I don't want to blow their lives up. Mom is making a really damning decision here, man. And I'm sorry you're in the middle of it. And it's just going to require some extra vigilance and making sure that you're okay. But, man, thank you so much for your call, brother. And we'll be thinking about you. We'll be with you, man. And for those of you who have an ex and you're post-divorce and you're dating and you're with somebody and you think, man, like this person's got these major red flag flaws, but they love me and they've quote unquote changed, whatever. Be so careful about how you bring your kids into your life and into your kids' lives. Be very careful, man. Your kids deserve more than you being with somebody who's an abuser. And quite frankly, you deserve to be with somebody who's more than an abuser.